In the heart of the city's historic district, hidden among abandoned buildings and alleys few dared to cross at night, stood the Serrano Building, a forgotten block of concrete, condemned by time, yet still looming like a scar on the skyline. It was there, on a stormy night, that 4 young people vanished without a trace. Their names quickly spread through headlines and across social media whispers. Lucas, an architecture student obsessed with forgotten places. Camila, his girlfriend, always chasing adrenaline for their YouTube channel. And their friends, Rafa and Bianca, who agreed to join the adventure as if accepting a forbidden dare. The group stepped into the building armed with flashlights, backpacks, and phones, ready to capture everything. But they never came back out. 3 days later, police called off the search, claiming there was no evidence of foul play. Officially, the case was filed as a collective disappearance. But for Eduardo Azevedo, a private investigator hired by the families, the story was far from over. One unsettling detail consumed his thoughts. Before vanishing, Bianca had sent her brother a single photo. It showed a wall covered in dozens of red handprints, as if someone had desperately tried to claw their way out from inside. Eduardo visited the building for the first time on an overcast afternoon. Wind howled through the shattered windows, scattering papers and dust along the hallway. The air was heavy with the stench of mold and rusted metal. Every step he took made the wooden floorboards groan, as if the place itself resented the presence of an intruder. As he explored, he noticed something unusual in the building's original blueprints, which he had recovered from old archives. There was a room, 305, marked on the 3rd floor. Yet, when he walked down the hallway, the doors were numbered up to 304, and then jumped directly to 306. Between them stood nothing but a flat wall. It didn't make sense. Gripping his flashlight tightly, Eduardo moved closer to the wall. The concrete looked newer than the rest of the building, as if it had been placed there to hide something. But the feeling was far worse. At that exact spot, the air grew colder, and he could swear he heard a muffled sound. A faint knock coming from the other side. And in that moment, Eduardo understood. The room was real. It just didn't want to be found. The muffled sound behind the wall refused to leave Eduardo's mind. He pressed his ear against the cold concrete and waited in silence. Suddenly, another knock, this time clearer, sharper. 3 distinct taps, almost like a code. A chill crawled down his spine. Is someone there? His voice echoed down the empty hallway. Silence answered first. Then came a metallic scrape, like something clawing at the other side. The flashlight in his hand trembled slightly. Eduardo took a deep breath and stepped back, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was just the building settling, or a rat trapped inside the walls. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that. That night, back in his small office, he spread the old blueprints across the desk. One detail immediately stood out. The renovation that had erased room 305 was carried out in the 1970s, after a series of incidents involving patients of a psychiatric clinic that once operated in the building. The records were smudged and incomplete, but one phrase appeared again and again in different notes. The room must remain closed. The next day, he returned to the building, this time carrying tools. The silence felt heavier than before, almost as if the structure itself was aware of his presence. Eduardo moved once more toward the wall between doors 304 and 306. With the crowbar, he began striking the concrete. Each blow echoed down the hallway like a verdict. And then, when the first fragment broke loose, the air grew thick, almost suffocating. A wave of cold swept over him, as if he had opened an invisible window to something that was never meant to be there. It was then that he clearly heard a faint, female voice whispering his name. Eduardo. He froze, his eyes locked on the freshly opened crack. How could anyone possibly know his name? The sound came again, closer this time, heavy with pain and despair. Help. Eduardo stepped back, his heartbeat racing, yet at the same time he felt something he couldn't explain. A pull between fear and compulsion. Part of him wanted to run. The other needed to know what was on the other side. And as he placed his hand against the crack, he realized the wall was pulsing like living flesh. The cold, pulsing touch of the wall made Eduardo pull back, but the crack was already open, breathing like an exposed wound. On the other side, the female voice grew more desperate, pleading, "Help, get me out of here." Against every instinct, he raised the crowbar and kept striking the concrete. Each fragment that fell revealed not bricks or beams, but a heavy darkness that seemed to swallow the beam of his flashlight. It was like opening a hole to somewhere else, or to nowhere at all. When he finally made enough space, Eduardo leaned in to look inside. What he saw was not an ordinary room. The walls were covered with the same handprints from the photo Bianca had sent. Only this time, the hands were still moving, sliding slowly, as if they were trying to push their way out of the wall itself. In the center stood 4 motionless figures: Lucas, Camila, Rafa, and Bianca. Upright, their eyes wide open, but utterly lifeless. They looked like human statues, trapped in an eternal trance. "They can still be freed," whispered the voice, now clearly behind him. Eduardo swung the flashlight, but the hallway was empty. The air grew heavy, almost solid, and then he realized the voice wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside him. In a panic, he tried to pull away, but hands shot out from the opening, clutching his arm, his shoulder, his leg. Cold as ice, yet strong as iron. He screamed, fighting to break free, but the more he resisted, the more he felt that something inside him wanted to stay. The last thing he heard before the darkness swallowed him was the voice, whispering softly, "The room needs a new guardian." The next morning, neighbors claimed they had heard noises coming from the building, but when the police inspected it, they found only dust and silence. No trace of Eduardo, no crack in the wall. The hallway was smooth again, flawless. Door 304, then 306, and between them, nothing but concrete, as if nothing had ever happened. But those who passed through at night swore they heard 3 sharp knocks behind the wall, followed by a deep male voice. repeating the same word over and over. Help,